So let's start. So welcome everybody, and thank you very much for attending to this webinar. My name is Xavier Plazes, and I am Product Marketing Director at Openbravo. For sure, you already know me from previous webinars. Today I'll be presenting this webinar with Asier Lostale, one of our product engineers. And as you know, the topic today is Openbravo performance monitoring. It will be just a presentation during around 6 minutes, and the goal is to explain you which are the tools that we provide and with Openbravo that are specially focused on this topic, performance monitoring. So let's start just as usual. We will have at the end of the session a short Q&A session. So please type your questions in the chat section. So we will try to solve all your questions. The webinar is being recorded, so once we finish it, we'll send it to you, and so you will be able to watch it from your office. Okay, so let's start. This is a short agenda about the webinar. So we'll talk mainly about two tools. One is the application monitoring tool, and which provides application monitoring, and we'll talk also about an additional tool which provides system level monitoring. Okay, so let's move to the first one. So the Openbravo application monitoring tool is the first tool we will talk about. This is a new tool that we have introduced with the offering. It's a commercial module based on a third-party solution by APP Dynamics. So if you don't know APP Dynamics has been this year positioned as a leader in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for application performance management. So we are talking about a market leader, and so we are really very happy to join forces with these guys. This tool is a commercial module, as I said. I think this module includes license for the APP Dynamics solution, and delivers also prepackaged configuration to work with Openbravo. As I said before, it's installed as any other commercial modules, and it only requires an extra setup in the Openbravo server once the module has been installed. And basically, the benefit that this tool provides to you and obviously to your customers is, it helps to deliver performance assurance to Openbravo installations. And basically, we talk about three main areas. It allows you to monitor application performance. It provides you alerts when there are problems, and obviously it helps to pinpoint root causes. So at the end, it helps to be more proactive in the system maintenance. So at the end, we help to be more prepared in case of unforeseen situations, in case of problems, potential issues that sometimes are difficult to identify, to isolate, and to solve. So all these are benefits that we will provide with this component. Basically, since it's a commercial module, so how to acquire it? So basically, it's a yearly subscription, and that must be subscribed for each Openbravo server that requires application monitoring. It's included for free for one server for the Openbravo Enterprise Edition customers, and it's available as an option for Openbravo Professional Edition customers. And obviously, if you have, depending on your deployment and your architecture, you can have additional Openbravo servers, then you can acquire additional modules in order to monitor these additional servers. And we have obviously a price in this case, which is here presented, and you have a discount from the second unit onwards. only in these cases when you are acquiring a second unit, because you have, well, you have a multi-server architecture, and you need to want to monitor this additional service. Okay, so this was a very quick introduction about the IP Dynamics solution, how it's provided with a commercial module now with Openbravo. So now we'll go through the more, let's say, technical explanation, and here, well, I'll let Asier Lostale to continue. Asier.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. So now I'm going to focus a little bit on more technical aspects of App Dynamics, and the main goal of this presentation is to let you know which is the value and how you can operate App Dynamics a little bit, and I mean which are the benefits that App Dynamics brings you. Okay. So I will start a little bit with some concepts of App Dynamics, yeah, to be able to understand how we can operate this tool. Okay, so let me. Okay, so first of all, App Dynamics is an external tool that has its own logical model. Okay, so the very first thing we need to do once it's installed is to model our Openbravo application. Okay, so App Dynamics defines three levels of for its logical model. First one is business application. A business application is models all the components that provide a set of functionality. Okay. In our case, depending, I mean, if you are a partner, you might have several business applications, one for each of the customers, or one for each of the instances each customer has. Okay, this would be a business application. Tiers is a representation of a key functional module. Okay, so for example, if you have a customer that has two different Openbravo instances communicating each other, okay, each of these Openbravo instances would be a different tier. Okay, and finally we have nodes. Nodes is more related with the hardware. It's more related with, at the end, with the JVMs, the Java Virtual Machines. Okay, so each of the JVMs, each tier would have would be considered as a node. Okay, so for example, suppose that you have an Openbravo instance where you have a clustering of Tomcats. Okay, you have a Tomcat that is a cluster. So each of the nodes that in the physical cluster is a node. It would be also represented as a node in the logical model for App Dynamics. Okay. But in any case, this is just to give you a sense of the complexity it can manage, App Dynamics. But at the end, usually the most common configuration is that an Openbravo instance is just a single business application with a single tier and with a single node. Okay, so that's it. And here you have a couple of screenshots on how this would be seen within the App Dynamics. Okay, so in the one in the left is the typical model where there is a single tier, which is Openbravo, with a single node. Okay, and you can see also how it communicates with external services. That's in the top. Also, if it uses other tools, in this case it is using mail service. And also, you can see the database that it is connected. And in addition, you have an overall information about how many calls this node is sending to each of the different components. Okay, the one in the right is one that it's a little bit more complex. It's a solution where we have two Openbravo instances communicating each other. Okay, and you can see also the communication between these two different applications. You see that there are many, I mean, there's several databases, and it's also communicating with external services. Okay, next topic is business transactions. Okay, so once we have a model how our application is, the next thing to do is to model what more business transactions. Okay. So business transaction is the mechanism that App Dynamics uses to order, to arrange, and to monitor application traffic. Okay. At the end, the business transaction represents logical user activity. So, for example, we would have different business transactions to model queries that are done to populate a grid, or another one would be processes on a document, background processes, and so on and so forth. These business transactions are configurable. Okay, so App Dynamics for Openbravo, which is the module that Xavi introduced before, provides prepackaged configuration with a minimum set of meaningful business transactions, meaningful for the Openbravo usage. Okay, so we have configured, for example, the ones that I explained above. Okay, all the queries to populate the grid are a single business transaction, and you can see how it evolves in the performance and how it behaves. Okay. But this again is something that is configurable. So we deliver this default configuration, but based on your requirements, you can fine-tune it to adapt to your needs. So, for example, if you have your own process you want to monitor because you know that it has a special impact in your system, you can define it as a single business transaction, this concrete process, and you would be able to monitor it. Okay, but always taking into account that the limit of the maximum number of business transactions is 50. This is a limitation that App Dynamics sets, yes, because one of the biggest concerns that App Dynamics as a tool has is not to damage the performance also in the systems that are being monitored. Okay, so at the end, App Dynamics says that the overhead that it is added to the servers that are monitored is up to 2%. But never more than that. Okay, and that's the main reason that they limit this number to 50. Okay, and once you have defined those business transactions, you will be able to see how it performs each of them, and you could even define some thresholds to say, okay, if let's say my process that I'm monitoring now takes more than 2 seconds, I consider this as a problem, and I will be notified in this case. Okay, and here you have a screenshot of an actual instance of App Dynamics. Okay, where we are seeing a business transaction. Okay, and as I mentioned before, for this business transaction, we have a lot of information about, for example, how many calls or how many times has been invoked during a period of time, which is the time that it took among the time, so the average time for its concrete period of time, a number of errors, and a lot of information, and I will explain later. Okay. Snapshots. Snapshot is the okay. So at the end, in the screenshot we saw before, we see that all the information is aggregated for this business transaction. Okay, so you have these graphs for that period of time. Okay, where you see that you have how many requests, how much time it took in average, and so on and so forth. Okay, but it's also very interesting to see how a concrete request perform. Okay, and this is done by App Dynamics using what they call snapshots. Okay, so at the end, a snapshot is a set of diagnostic data taken for a concrete request at the end in a given point of time. Okay, and it has, in addition to what we see before, I mean, about the time and so on, you have also information about the queries that were executed to the database, stack traces to know which are the methods in the Java side and how much time each of them took, errors in case of any. You can have also information about the parameters used for the request. you have information about the Openbravo session. This is interesting because it allows you to somehow understand which is the person that finally executed this request. For example, let's suppose that you have a report that usually takes like half a second, but in a concrete execution it took 10 seconds. Okay, so by default this will be saved as a snapshot. If you open this snapshot, you will be able to understand the session that launched this report, in addition to some parameters, for example, which were the filters that were used to execute it. Based on that, you can even query to or ask to a person that executed the query or the request why he did, or what he's planning, or what was his intention, and so on and so forth. And you might even decide to add some restrictions to this report, not to allow, I don't know, crazy filtering that shows you the information for the last 10 years or whatever. Okay? But again, in order not to be very intrusive in the performance, not all the requests are saved as snapshot. Okay, so at the end there are some rules that trigger snapshots, and once again, as you will see with AppDynamics, almost everything is configurable. Okay, and one of the things that can be configured is those rules to trigger snapshots. Okay, and the basic rules for triggering snapshots are periodic collection. So by default, every 10 minutes we are collecting in a snapshot for each of the business transactions we have defined. Okay, so you might have as up to 50 business transactions. So every 10 minutes you will have one snapshot for each of these 50 business transactions. Okay, it also by default, it also records snapshots for what it considers slow, very slow, stalled, or erroneous business requests at the end. Okay, so whenever I mean, even it's not in this scheduling, but in this 10 minutes scheduling, but as I mentioned before, you execute a report that usually takes 1 second, and your execution took 10 seconds. This is considered as slow, and it will be saved as a snapshot in order you to be able to understand what happened there. Okay, and well, there is another concept I will explain it a little bit later, which is health rules. Health rules that you can define for business transactions might trigger what AppDynamics calls a diagnostic session. And the diagnostic session is you can define that for that business transaction that violated that health rule, you will have during a period of time, by default I think it is 10 minutes, you will have several snapshots. So whenever there is a request to that concrete business transaction, it will be saved as a snapshot during a period of 10 minutes. This allows you to understand also if, I don't know, if it was just a concrete case that just one of the requests was slow, or for some reason you have more problems that you might analyze with these snapshots. Okay, here you see a couple of screenshots of snapshots, how they are in visualized in AppDynamics. Okay, so the one in the left is just a list of all the snapshots for a given business transaction. In fact, it's not for a given business transaction, but it is for all the business transactions. Okay, so you have a list where appear all the snapshots taken during a period of time. You have information also about the business transaction for that each snapshot it is for, when the request started, how much time it took to execute, and if it was slow or if it was fine. Okay, and you can also open these snapshots, and in this case, in this screenshot in the right, what you can see, if you are able to read, is in this case it's showing the call graph. Okay, so here what you see is all the Java methods that were invoked during this snapshot, how much time took each to execute. And for example, for the ones that are executing also queries to the database, you can open it and see which are the queries executed to the database and how much time took each of them to complete. Okay, so at the end, this information is very valuable mainly for the developers in terms of taking care of the problem and analyzing and so on, because it's giving real information on a real system, on a real instance, on a production instance at the end. Okay, so till now I explained a little bit the concepts, the logical concepts, and the concepts more related to the logical model, how business transactions are. Okay, and now I will explain a little bit about hardware and JVM. Okay, so in addition to this information I mentioned before, AppDynamics is also able to collect information about physical hardware and statistics about your Java virtual machine, okay, your JVM. Okay, so regarding hardware, it takes basic information about it, but it tells you which is the usage of the CPU, which is the memory usage in the system, and the network and disk input and output. Okay, and regarding the JVM, it shows information about the heap, how much memory heap is used during the execution, and garbage collections. This garbage collection is also interesting because at the end, when garbage collection is happening, it's consuming resources from the CPU, and it allows you to understand if those resources were consumed by these garbage collections. Okay. And okay, you can see this information for a given period of time. But whenever there is a snapshot, it also allows you easily to have information about how the system was when the snapshot was taken. Okay, so for example, with this report that took 10 seconds, it will allow you to see how the system was some minutes before and some minutes after the completion of the request. Okay, this is interesting because it could be that these 10 seconds were not due just to the execution of, or to the logic that the report has, but it might be also affected by the system. I mean, if your system is using all the CPU and other stuff, the report might be slow just because it has no resources to be executed. Okay? And this gives you a sense of how the system was. Okay, and again, here you have a couple of screenshots of the one in the left is about the hardware. So you can see the monitoring of the CPU, memory, disk, and network input output. And the one in the right is about the heap, the JVM at the end. Here we are seeing how the heap is used, how much heap is used at each point, and also you have information about time spent in garbage collections. Okay, and I've been constantly speaking about the period of time. Okay, so AppDynamics always shows information for a given period of time. And you have this period of time, this time range are applied globally, and allows you to define for when the data is which data or when was the data collected that you want to see. Okay, and by default, I mean, this is the screenshot here is about how it is seen in the UI of AppDynamics. Okay, and by default you have information for from the last 5 minutes till the last 1 year. Okay, but you can also define your own time ranges and save. This is interesting because, for example, when a customer is reporting an issue, it usually says, I don't know, during Wednesday morning it was slow. Okay, so you can go there to AppDynamics, define your custom time range, save it to check it later. Okay. Okay, so now we have a little bit of overview of the different AppDynamic concepts. Now I'm gonna tell you a little bit on how we use AppDynamics to monitor production environments. Okay, so at the end we define like 3 different approaches of monitoring. Okay, and at the end I will talk a little bit about how you are able also to compare the performance of the application before and after some fix or update has been applied. Okay, so continuous monitoring. The goal of continuous monitoring is to be able to detect potential problems even before they become a real issue. Okay, and this is something that, I mean, once you have your AppDynamics instance, you can see which are the slowest transactions. Okay, and you have all your business transactions rated based on the slowness. Okay, and usually you should. I mean, these are potentially problematic. It doesn't mean that you might have some transactions that are slow and it's okay then to be slow, but at the end, at least they should be checked just to understand if what they are doing makes sense or they could be improved. Okay. In addition to slow transactions, you can also sort your transactions based on the load. Again, and these two figures, time and load, gives you a sense of how much resources those transactions are consuming. Okay. Another interesting thing is the baseline comparison. Baseline at the end is defined by AppDynamics based on the average times that each transaction took. Okay, so you know that in general your report that you have defined is taken in average 1 second. Okay, and you can compare your current timings with the average. Okay, so you can see that even if it's 1 second in average, during the last week it took in average 5 seconds. In this case, okay, you can also start drilling down to understand if it was due, for example, because during the last week you had more load, and then you might require to increase your system configuration just because the usage is becoming bigger. Or you could even understand that the queries that before were performing well are now slow, so it might be due to the amount of data you have in the system, and you might have an opportunity to improve those queries and so on and so forth. Okay. And errors. Okay. Another interesting thing that AppDynamics does for you is to detect erroneous transactions. And so AppDynamics considers as erroneous all the requests that are throwing an error, and all the requests that are logging in the Openbravo log error messages. Okay, so whenever this happens, it is considered as an error. And if you remember before, I talked about the snapshots, and whenever there is an erroneous transaction, a snapshot is taken for that transaction. Okay, so it's also a very good practice to take a look to the errors you might have there and to understand why are they happening, because at the end the goal is to clean up those errors. There are errors that are correct. Okay, so for example, when you process a document, it throws an error in case, or when you try to process a document, it throws an error in case that it was already processed. Okay, that's okay. And no problem with that. And you can even define that some exceptions are not considered as an error. Okay, and this is something that you can also configure. Okay, so before I explained that Dynamics for Openbravo delivers some prepackaged configuration with that defines some business transactions and in general makes sense for all the Openbravo instances. Okay, but Dynamics also allows you to split those business transactions in several. So, for example, one case would be data source. Data source is the business transactions we use to populate the grid, and we have merged all the grid in a single business transaction. Okay, so regardless if you are opening the sales order window, if you are opening the business partner window, all the requests to populate the different grids are in a single business transaction. But it might happen that the sales order window works fine, but not the business partner window. Okay. And in this case, what you might do is to split this business transaction into two. You might have the business transaction for the business partner window as a business transaction, and the rest would be the default data source. Okay, this allows you first of all to understand the real impact, because you will see that you will see graphs for this concrete business transaction, the one that you know that is slow. Okay, and with this. You will see how it behaves during the time. Okay. And also once you prepare a patch or fix for this problem, you will see the impact that this fix has in the real life. I mean, you will see that once you have prepared some fix for this slow data source. Before it was taking whatever time, and now it's taking half of the time. Okay. Okay. You can also fine-tune the data collection. At the end, data collection is the information that is collected within the snapshots. Okay. And for example, you can configure for each different business transaction which is the data you want to have. In the case of the report we talked before, the typical information you might want to collect is the field name you are using to execute this report. Okay. By default, AppDynamics doesn't collect any additional information. AppDynamics for Openbravo provides some default data collection. Okay, but in your concrete case, in your concrete report, you might require to set up some configuration to be able to retrieve these parameters. Okay. At the end, the goal of setting this information is to be able to understand how the request was executed, and even ideally to be able to reproduce it. Okay. So if you have all the parameters that make sense for you, you might be able then to go to the development environment and to replicate this query or this request in this case. Okay. Because at the end, this will provide a very valuable information for the developers in terms of fixing these issues. Okay. Another interesting thing is that with this split of business transactions and retrieving of data, it usually helps you to understand if the problem is in a customization you did or your partner did, or if it is something that is even in the Openbravo product. In case it is in the Openbravo product, the responsibility of Openbravo, and you should report it to the support of Openbravo. And in case it is something that it is customization, should be solved by the partner or whatever. Okay. So for example, here you have a view of the different business transactions sorted by different criteria. Okay, so by the number of requests, by the time it took to complete, by number of errors, and so on and so forth. Okay, this is also interesting when you are doing a continuous monitoring. Just to understand, I mean, even you might not have any real problem, or you might not have noticed, but here this gives you information about which are the potential problematic transactions you have in your system. Okay, so next approach of monitoring is proactive monitoring. Okay, so the goal of proactive monitoring is proactive from the point of view of the tool, of the AppDynamics is, okay, I want AppDynamics to be proactively checking my system and notifying in case it detects something that is starting to go wrong. Okay, so it doesn't require to collapse the system completely, but I don't know, for some reason, something that before was behaving in a way, now it's behaving worse. Okay, so for this, what we do is we define health rules. Health rules at the end define what is acceptable, which is the acceptable performance for different business transactions or even hardware. Okay, so for example, you can define health rule that this report I talked before, the average time is 1 second, so I wanna get notified in case it takes more than 2 seconds. Okay. In fact, there are 2 violations levels. It's warning and critical. So you can say, for me, warning is if it takes more than 2 seconds, but whenever it takes more than 5 seconds, I consider it as a critical. Okay. And what AppDynamics does for you is to monitor these values. So once you have defined the health rule for your report, AppDynamics will be continuously monitoring this rule. And in case this rule is violated, you will be notified. Okay, so to get a notification on health rule violation, you need to define policies, and these policies, it's very simple. What define is for each of the rules you have defined, when you want to get notified. So, for example, you don't want to get notified for warnings, but yes for critical violations, for example. Okay. It also defines which is the recipient of this alert, and typically, depending on the health rule type, the recipient might be different. I mean, if because before I explained an example of health rule for a business transaction, but in the same way you could define health rules for hardware. Okay, so in case the CPU usage is higher than 70% during the last half an hour, I want to have a notification. And depending on the health rule, you might want to have different recipients. Okay, so for the ones for the hardware, I want to have notify my IT system, but for the one of the business transactions, I want the developers to get notified in order to be able to understand and to pinpoint the problem. Okay, so here you have a couple of screenshots on how you can define health rules. Okay, so there are many different types of health rules for, as I said before, for hardware, for business transactions, even for each business transaction, you might define different rules and so on and so forth. Okay, and at the end, as explained before, you define the policy, meaning that when do you want to get notified and in which cases. So if it is critical, if it is a warning, if it just continues during a period of time, and all of this. And all of this, again, is configurable. And again, AppDynamics for Openbravo module has some default configuration you can fine-tune later. Okay, and the last approach of monitoring is reactive. The reactive monitoring is at the end, okay, I know I have a problem, I want to pinpoint where the problem is, which is the cause of the problem at the end. And typically, you get notified the system is slow by your customer, by your final user. Okay, and typically you have problems during a given concrete period of time. Okay, so it's last morning it was very slow. The system was very slow. So what should we do in this case? we should go to App Dynamics and first of all to set up the time range to the period that this issue was reported. Okay, and starting from that point, you will have all the information we talked before about when we were speaking about the continuous monitoring. You will have all this information, all the information about slow transactions, how error, about everything, but just for this concrete period of time. Okay, so then what you need to do is to focus on the business transactions, on the requests that are known to be problematic because they were slow or because they had errors. Okay. Okay. So now we know how to monitor a little bit. The goal of monitoring again is to fix the problems. So you monitor, you detect at the end a problematic business transaction, you detect where the problem is within that business transaction, you prepare some fix, and you deploy it at the end. You follow your QA internal cycle, you deploy in the testing environment, you do the testing, you go to the production, and finally it is deployed in the production environment. Okay, which is the one we are monitoring. And now what we want to do is to see if the fix is correct or not by checking which is the real impact. At the end, we always have some estimation. We think, okay, this report is gonna take the half of the time, but we want to ensure that. We want to check that the fix is working properly. Okay, and what App Dynamics has for this is comparison of performance during two given periods of time. Okay, so at the end, you will know that the fix was deployed in the production environment the given day. So you will be able to set up a period of time that is before and another one that is after the fix, and you will be able to compare the overall performance for the whole application, and also you will be able to do checks for per business transaction. Okay, so this is how it is visualized in the screenshot we have in the right. I define two different periods of time. Okay, for a single business transaction. In this case, was Cash App in the web POS. And what I see is, for example, having more or less the same load, the response time has decreased from 21 to 6 seconds. Okay. And in the one in the left, what I see is the graphs of number of calls and average response time for these two periods of time. Okay, so all of this is about App Dynamics. Now, in addition to App Dynamics and mostly focusing on the system level, there is another tool which is Moonin. This is a free tool that you can install in your Openbravo server. This is not delivered as a module, but you can just install it. Okay, and this is something that allows you to complement the information that App Dynamics provides you. Okay, so at the end, as I mentioned before, App Dynamics also gathers some information about the system. Okay, but it is somehow quite a basic information, and this Moonin has much more detailed information for the system. Okay, it not only focuses on performance, but it also allows you to understand other parameters of your system. For example, this usage. Okay, so it allows you to understand that it allows you to see which is the trend of this usage during the time, so you can get notified in case you have reached some limit. Because this might require you to do some cleanup on your disk, or even to add more space to your system. Okay, Moonin allows also you to customize with your own metrics. Okay? So, for example, you can create your metric to understand or to know how many concurrent users you have in your instance among the time during the time. Okay. And regarding at the end, it always shows the information in graphical mode. Okay, and you can see graphs for 4 different periods of time: daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. Okay, and in addition, in the same way that Epidemics does, it allows you to create alerts for the different metrics and to get notified when those metrics are reached. Okay, I will give you some examples of monitoring. So, for example, one of the typical metric that you want to have is the database size. In this case, this graph is displaying information about the last year, how the size of the database has increased during the last year. Okay. Another one is about the usage of the disk. Okay, so here you can see it's a percentual. In this case, it's percentage space of your disk you are using. Again, and you see how it's evolving. In fact, here you have 2 different graphs. And this is because we have 2 different disks. And also, you can define here in this graph, you can see the alert we have defined. Okay, so in this case, we have this green line that it's around the 90%. If I want to identify it whenever the disk space is the usage of the disk space is more than the 90%. Okay. And this last example is about database connections. Okay, so it's monitoring how many connections we have for our Openbravo database. And in this example, we see that we have here three peaks. Okay, and these 3 peaks were caught as exceptional and trigger an alert. Okay. And you see that after that, some actions were taken, and it has never happened again. So this allows us to understand the real problem, to fix it, and once it was applied, then it never happened. Okay, so that's all the theory I wanted to talk about. Now I'm gonna do a short demo. The main goal of this demo is not to teach you how to operate, because at the end, as you have seen, it's quite complex. But is the main goal is to give you a sense of how the UI is and a little bit how it is operated. Okay, so the use case I'm gonna present is just to monitor a system that has not currently problems, but to do a continuous monitoring to see which are the transactions we might improve in some case. Okay, so I'm going to share my desktop. Okay, so when you logged in Openamics, this is the very first thing you see. Okay, so you have a dashboard with information about all the business applications we have. In this case, in this instance, we have 2. Okay, and you can even create different dashboards and so on and so forth. Okay. Also, I want to explain that this concrete App Dynamics instance is not a real production instance, but it is just some testing environment we have for the continuous integration. So the data we have here is not very interesting, but at least it will allow us to see how the UI is. And the main reason for this is that we didn't want to use here any real customer instance, not to share data with. Okay, so Here, the very first thing we see is that, okay, we have two applications, and in a very quick view, it demonstrates that, okay, app dynamics detects as normal. There is no health violations in this case, okay? Here in the top, we have the time range, okay? And you can define from the last 5 minutes to the last 1 year, but you can create your custom time range, or you can use someone that is predefined, okay, that has been saved before by you. Okay, now I have applied a time range, and again saying that during this time range, the two applications I have here were normal. If you click on the view applications, you will see a wrap-up or a summary of the different applications you can have in this control in this app dynamics instance. Okay. So you have information about how many calls you had in this period of time, which was the average response time for the business transactions, and so on and so forth. Now let's go to the application. Okay, so to the business application. In this case, what we have here is this graph that depicts the node that I mentioned before. In this case, I only have one node I only have one tier with one node. Okay. It shows you also the database that it's connected to, which is the traffic between the node and the database, and also the different external web services that this system is connected to. Then, in the bottom, I have information for the trend of the load, how many calls I have at different points during this range of time. Also, something about the average response time among the time, and information about the errors. Okay. Okay. This part is events. It's about application changes. For example, might be some changes you did in your system, or even if you restarted your Tomcat, so on. Internal diagnostics is about diagnostic sessions that app dynamics is launching because of some rules. And in case you have health rules violations, they would appear here as events, and also they would appear in the business transaction or in the server health, depending on which type of business of health rule it is. Okay, if it is something for the system, would appear as a server health, or in other cases, it would appear as a business transaction health. Okay, and this scorecard gives you information about the percentage of different normal, slow, very slow, stall, or error transactions. Okay, so in this case, what we are seeing is that at least for app dynamics, the system is behaving correctly. Now, what we can do is go to the top business transactions, and these top business transactions is sorting the different transactions for you based on different criteria. Okay, so first graph we have here is about the load. Okay, so how many calls we have during this period of time. This one is about response time, and the one below is about slow transactions. I wanted to comment also the difference between response time and slow transactions. Okay, so for example, here we see that the one that is taking the most, it takes like 6-7 seconds, appears in the response time chart, but it doesn't appear in the slow transactions. Okay, so it's also interesting to understand what a business transaction is. What a slow business transaction is for app dynamics. At the end, if a business transaction is always taken 10 seconds, in average, it will appear in the response time because it takes a lot of time, but it might not appear in the slow transactions, because slow transaction is defined as something above the average. Okay, so it will appear as slow whenever instead of taking 10 seconds, it takes 15 or 20 or whatever, okay? And again, it's something you can define, okay? You can define which is the threshold for transactions to be considered slow or very slow even. Okay, and it can be defined as something that it is percentage above the average, or it can be never considered something that is more than a given amount of time. Okay, so now I'm gonna open a given business transaction. For example, I'm gonna focus on this data source, which was one of the ones with more load. Okay, and when you open a business transaction, what you see is a dashboard very similar to the one for the whole application, but just for this concrete transaction. And again, you see the load, but in this case, the load, it is just for this concrete business transaction. You see the response time, the average response time among the time, and you have also the same scorecard and information about database queries. Okay, so from here, the interesting thing is to see the snapshots and the slow response time. Okay, so if you go to the snapshots, what you see here is that all the snapshots taken for this given business transaction. Okay, and for all of them, you can see that the user experience, which can be normal, but in some cases you have slow. Okay, when it was taken, when the transaction started, how much time it took to complete, and which is the URL. Also, this information here is about, a snapshot might or not contain a cal graph. The cal graph is information about the Java methods that were invoked during this transaction. Okay, and in some cases, for example, when App Dynamics detects an error, it starts collecting a snapshot. So in this case, you might have a partial graph instead of a complete graph. Okay. So here you see all of them. You can even sort by response time or whatever. Okay. And it is interesting also this graph of slow response times. Okay, so here you see information about the slow and very slow transactions for this concrete business transaction, and compared with the amount of the ones that were considered as normal. Okay. Oh no, sorry. This is the total load. Okay, so this is the total load, and you can compare with the number of slow or very slow. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open one of the slow ones. Okay, so when I open a snapshot, here what I have is, first of all, I have a very quick view on where the time was spent. Okay, so I see that the 30% of the time was spent in the Java side, whereas almost the 70% of the time was spent in the database. You have information about it was taken because it was slow, the execution, the time it took to execute, when it started. Okay, and this request UID or even this link, okay, allows you to share with Openbravo support information about this concrete snapshot. Okay, because also here I forgot to mention that here you are seeing the URL. Okay, so again we are grouping, as I mentioned before. We are seeing the data source, which that it is the business transaction used to populate all the different grids, and here you have information about the URL. At the end, this URL is giving you a sense of which is the real data source that was invoked. From here, if in case you have problems, you can start thinking about if this, in this case, if it is something that it is a common table, common common data source for the whole Openbravo infrastructure, or if it is something that it is your own table that it is added by one of your modules. Okay, and starting from here, you can start to think about if it is something that should be reported and fixed by Openbravo, or if it's something that, on the other hand, it is in the customer side, in the customizations we did. Okay. So again, opening this business transaction allows you to do a drill down. Okay. So in this drill down, first of all, you have a summary, again, with the same information I explained before, and some other stuff, which is, for example, this summary explains you why this snapshot was taken, okay? Following the rules that were mentioning during the first part of the presentation. Okay, so in this case, it was taken because it was scheduled. It was one of these every 10 minutes this snapshot is taken, but in addition, it was slower than the average, and it is breaking one of the thresholds that are defined behind. Okay, and here you can see which are the thresholds for this transaction. Again, okay, this session ID it will allow you to know this is the session ID also in the Openbravo ERP, so you will be able to see which is the user that launches this request. Here you have information about all the methods that were invoked, in all the Java methods that were invoked, which is this number here is the line in the code, and you have information also about the time spent in each of them. Okay, and even more, if those methods are executing queries against the database, you can open it and see which is the query. Here you have the query. And also it says, well, this query is not complete. It's truncated to, I don't know, exactly, I think it's 1,000 characters, but at least it gives you some hint on what is that. Okay. Here you can see that in this case, this query that took like 150 milliseconds, consuming the 23% of the time of the whole transaction, and it returned 8 records. Okay, so this is the complete view, and in addition, you have also the same information but sorted by execution time. Okay, so here you can see that at the end, the most heavy method in this request was this one. Okay, and again, you can navigate to the queries. In addition to that, you have information about the queries, and you can see all the queries that were executed during this transaction and how much time each of them took. And as I explained before, here you have information about the different parameters that were used during the request. Okay, and this is also very interesting because at the end will allow us to replicate this exactly query, or this exactly this request with the same parameters, in order to be able to replicate it in a testing environment or whatever, to start analyzing more in depth this problematic area. Okay, so at the end, with this information, we are able to understand which are the problems and to pinpoint the root cause. And based on that, we can tell our developers or even to the Openbravo support to take a look and to understand why are the problems. Okay, so let me stop sharing. Okay, so this was the demo, and this was the whole presentation.
Thanks a lot, Sier. As I said before, a great presentation, and I hope it has been interesting for all of you. We've been recording the session, so we'll share with you the link to the recorded session, and we'll share as well the slides. Any case, for sure, because this is somehow it's a new thing for all of us, so you will have for sure questions, and once you start using it for sure. So you can use our regular channels, talk with super guys, just to clarify your any doubts. There is also some information in the wiki, so you can go there and well, get some additional details. And well, I guess we will continue providing some additional assets as once we are creating them from our product team. And well, that's all. As I said before, thanks a lot for your attention, and see you soon in the next webinar.
Okay, thank you. Bye.